People scale back to just one command destroyer, and then using that extra points to protect that command destroyer a lot better.
Balgorn, the Balgorn, the Balgorn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elise Randolph, and welcome to the Alliance Tournament Talk Show. I am joined by a great host of people today. We're going to be breaking down not only this Alliance Tournament, but some previous moments in Alliance Tournament history. We've got some great stats for you. We've got some explosions. We've got some ads. We've got a bunch of cool stuff for you to check out. And, I'm not here alone, obviously. I was locked in Nottingham in the bathroom there since week 3 of the Alliance Tournament. They did not let me out. Nash found me as soon as the Alliance Tournament finished, let me out, and now here I am. But like I said, I'm not alone. I am joined by Suetonia. Suetonia, he's kind of, if we go through the list of accolades that he has, it would probably take the entire hour and a half of our show. He's a CSM representative. He's a streamer. He's one of the better pilots in EVO Online, probably top 3 pilots. If you were to make a list of some people, I don't know. I think he's great. So Suetonia, welcome.
Hi, welcome.
That is good. We not only have Suetonia, we also have the resident EVNT stats man and commentator, and just a handsome man in general, Alexi. Alexi, say hello.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
Nice. Very happy to have him around. Also joined by GM Spider, who is helping with the Alliance Tournament, being a ref, and also having CCP Blorb around, which was really good show. For the people that wanted to watch the Alliance Tournament, but also wanted to watch bird pictures. I mean, we have that demographic covered.
Hey, guys.
We've also got 2 pilots with us from the Alliance Tournament. Damascus Kadesh, who were the darlings of Alliance Tournament 15 on the Tempest team, did incredibly well in a deep run this year. Damascus, say hello.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
That's good to have you. And finally, we've got the Tri-Team captain, the darling of this year's Alliance Tournament. And Barry, why don't you just give everyone a what's up? I know there's a huge crowd of supporters for you in Nottingham outside the studio.
Hey, everybody. It's been great to be here. I'm really looking forward to today's stream.
Nice. Well, me too. But before we get started, I want to get everyone kind of something they can do to, just talk about the Alliance Tournament, get in the spirit. Alliance Tournament is over, so we've got a year, maybe a little bit longer to wait. Depends on how the dates work for the next Alliance Tournament. But, just to get your juices flowing, we're going to have a poll in Twitch chat and among our commentators here as well as to your favorite Alliance Tournament ships. So we're going to put that over in Twitch chat. You'll be able to say what your favorite is. Personally, my favorite, I don't know, probably the Tengu, because the Tengu, whether it breaks or not, it'll always have a warm place in my heart. So just to start things off, guys, what are your favorite Alliance Tournament ships? Suetonia, I'll throw it to you first.
Oh, I'd say Kestrel, but I don't think that's an Alliance Tournament ship. Although I think it did win 2 matches this year.
Yeah, didn't it have a really good win rate? I think I had like Alexi probably knows better, but I think I had like above 60% win rate.
Yeah, I guess my favorite is probably the Hyena, because I really like the Kingslayer or the Core Slayer comp, because I just like to see the logistics die straight away at the start of the match.
Yeah. Okay, Alexi, what is your favorite Alliance Tournament ship?
I think personally it's got to be the Varga, just because there are some really fun things you can do with it. And back when they were a big part of the meta, they were doing some fun things.
I've lost an Alliance Tournament to Vargas. Fun fact. It actually was not that fun. Damascus, you're a pilot. What's your favorite ship? What do you itching to fly either in the Alliance Tournament or something that you have like fond memories of flying in previous tournaments?
Man, I was gonna say that this year it turned into the sacrilege because I found myself in it repeatedly, and so that I was having a good time in that. But in the past, I've been in the absolution, and kind of want to get back into that in a future tournament setting.
Those Amarian ships, not usually a staple of the Alliance tournament, but a pretty big showing this year in Alliance Tournament 16. We can go into that a little bit later. GM Spider, what was your favorite Alliance Tournament ship in years past or this year? Did you get to heal anyone to half health? Did that just warm your heart?
No, I actually didn't do that. I did blow up a couple guys, but that's a long story. But yeah, I'd say the Paladin always has kind of a soft spot with me. So yeah, I'm gonna say the Paladin is my favorite ship.
My goodness, this is absolutely insane. And Mary, what is your favorite ship? I know you guys kind of have a soft spot in your heart, probably for the Leshak, the flag Leshak that took you so far. What's your favorite ship though?
I have a soft spot for the Leshak, but I can never put down a Deacon. It is my favorite ship in the game, my favorite ship in the AT.
Oh my God, such a high skill cap on those tiny little frigates. They can do so much work. They're incredibly point efficient as well. And talking about point efficiency, we've got the stats man himself, Alexei Aksan. He is with us. He has compiled some stellar, cool ships for us, or for stats, not only from this year, not only from last year, but for the last like 8 years. It's absolutely insane. Alexei, why don't you just talk about a little bit of the project that you guys have started?
Well, at the moment, we've gone back for the last 10 years of Alliance tournaments, and I have to give most of the credit to my other half, who did like hundreds of hours of trawling through videos, trawling through Zkill, finding every single pilot that was involved in all of these matches and how they turned out, and recording it all. So we've got this incredible repository now of what's been happening that goes all the way back to Alliance Tournament 7 at the moment. Taking it back further at this point, we're genuinely not sure anyone could, because I hate to use the line, but the logs pretty much show nothing, and trying to find out what's going on is hell.
Yeah, before Alliance Tournament 6, it kind of seemed like a completely different endeavor, a seat of your pants type thing. But that's still incredible. You've gone back 10 years. Ridiculous. So every year that I've been flying in the Alliance Tournament, you have a record of. So hopefully you were easy on me for those stats. But talking about stats, one of the first things we have going on is the most capped players, the players that have flown the most in the Alliance Tournament so far. And we can throw that on screen. It is an incredible look to see the number of wins that these guys have. It seems like if you've been in the Alliance Tournament for a long time, you've done your fair share of winning.
Oh yes, like to that, I think though this is technically the players who've played the most matches, it is pretty much also the 10 players who won the most matches in history. The people who keep coming back tend to be the people who are fairly good at this. And we see some serious names that go back a very long way. I'm sure you, of course, recognize the PL players there, and the occasional PL players there. But topping the list is, I'm probably going to murder this because it's one of those that looks so simple, but Eyes Helia. I'm sure someone can correct me, but predominantly flying for Hydra, occasionally for Warlords, and clocking up 58 matches across the Alliance tournament. That is nearly an entire Alliance tournament. Back when sort of 7 or 8, there were only 63 matches. That is a huge amount of experience.
Yeah, it definitely is. And on one of the more dominant teams in the Alliance tournament as well, like they've had their share of winners bracket results. It seems like they're always in the top 2. They're always in the grand finals or just on the outside looking in. And that sort of consistency is hard to recreate, as we've seen going forward from Alliance tournament 15 and onward. So Alliance tournament 16, Hydra Reloaded or Vidra Reloaded. Man, I suck at doing that. I wish they would pick better names that are so more different, but they don't. But yeah, going down the list, you also have Destoya and Dancool. They go for the Alliance Tournament team for PL. I know Dancool was the captain and co-captain a few years ago. Destoya is just a pilot that always seems to show up for practice. And then, going forward, right from there is Pandy. Pandy is one of the pilots, one of the core battleship pilots for the Vydra Reloaded team. And man, oh man, have they been like? Can anyone beat them? Are they going to win like every other tournament from here on out? Like, what's going on? Suetonia, you know these guys pretty good. Get into their mindset a little bit.
Well, Pandy as well. A lot of these Vidra guys, they came from the Afterlife, and some of them came from Darkside as well, and a few came from the Gorgon Empire. So they've always been part of these really strong Russian teams. I think they've been on teams that had Faffy Waffy, who's another like really experienced player who's not on this list, but he's co-captain a lot of the teams that the Vidra players have played for. And yeah, I think they kind of had I think the reason why they're winning a lot now is because they're sort of been taken under Hydra's wing, so to speak, with the theory crafting that Hydra have. Because as we saw Faffy Waffy this year, he did really well. I think he was it top 6? Or he's like 5th or 6th along with the Tuskers. They got knocked out of the semi-winner finals by Hydra. They have this kind of like weird Russian meta where they just bring random stuff and you can't really predict them. And I think that's why they do so well, but it's also why they maybe aren't quite as consistent.
Yeah, you say they have these like weird meta. So in the EVNT Championship Series, which is a thing that EVNT #plug does throughout the year, we do twice a year. We have these like 5-on-5 fights where you can pick from ships when Suetonia crafts the ship fits, and so teams can just pick the ships, and it's a really neat setup. So you guys should watch it or compete. They play on a team. The Vydra Reloaded players, at least some of them, play on a team called the Sudden Otters. And I remember they would always draft the most ridiculous things, and they would somehow win with it. They were the only people picking like the Megathron, for instance. And it was so ridiculous and so wonky, and it felt so clowny, but they were just strong setups that maybe people didn't expect, and that gave them a massive advantage. And then combined with like just really good piloting skills. And then going further down the list, we have El Diablo del Rojo, who was on the Tri team this year. DHB Wildcat, who is co-captaining the NC Dot team since he moved over from Hydra way back when. Hard SP, who's on the Hydra team. Casper24, who was on the PL side this year. He was on Hydra previously. And then Ice Tim as well. So these guys, like, just all-stars. And I'm sure we're going to see them in future Alliance tournaments. This piloting skill for almost all these guys is incredible. Maybe not so much for the PL guys, but for everyone else, great pilots and just ice water running through their veins to compete on that highest stage and have so many wins under their belt. But we asked some polls starting off, and I'll just repeat it. Your favorite Alliance tournament ship? I know CCB Fozzie, his favorite Alliance tournament ship, every time I ask him, is the Sleipnir. Back when he would theorycraft ships, he would always have, or theorycraft setups, he'd always have these Sleipnir-based rush teams, Sleipnir-based control teams. I know Suetonia likes fly killers, and there used to be a Sleipnir variant of that. So yeah, one of the craziest ships out there is the Sleipnir, and we've got a cool graph for it, for the Sleipnir as well. Alexei, why don't you just break that down a bit?
I'm not sure which graph we're going to next in that case, but no, we've got. Sorry. Okay. The voice in my head is being confusing. Most cap ships is the fact. This is something that actually really surprised me. Like a lot of the ships on here, you kind of expect to see things like the Purifier and Hound being, at least in the last couple of years, thrown into every single comp, and particularly with yes, it is. That's me. I say indeed a lot when I'm nervous. But they're being thrown into pretty much every single comp because they're low points. When you can have duplicates of them, there are a huge amount of damage that you can pull out very quickly. Things like the Neros and the Scimitar have been the go-to logistics for years. Before a lot of recent point changes, you would typically rely on one of the two as your logistics because they were that much faster than their corresponding T2s. But top of the list is the Sleipnir, which just like 88 through 8010 dominated the meta. It stomped over pretty much everything else. And then everyone's kind of had this weird love-hate relationship with it since, where it's been a reasonably good ship since they rebalanced command ships, but it's not been quite the, oh dear God, it's the Sleipnirs again ship that it originally was.
So Suetonia, you were super active in the Alliance tournaments that Alexi is talking about, where the Sleipnir was so dominant. What makes it, or what made it, such a good ship to have? Was it like a different rule set, different points, or what made it so good?
The Sleipnir is just one of those ships that's really good, and it brings a lot to a team all the time. Because not only does it do really good DPS, it has good utility options since it brings links as well. It has a very good slot layout, so it can bring you can normally do what you want with it in terms of, you've got 1 or 2 mid slots spare to do what you want if you need sensor boosters or more tackle or whatever. It's also pretty fast too, even though it's a command ship. It's one of the fastest ones. It also has kind of selectable damage type, and it has a fall off bonus too, so it can kind of kite at range too. What made it really strong in the past was I think the Sleipnir was one of the best command ships before they rebalanced all of them to be really balanced and kind of where the Sleipnir was in the previous AT. And the rush comps used to be, I think, a lot more powerful back in sort of 88 to 8010 as well. Before, I think we started seeing teams like screen a lot better because what used to happen, and we also used to have bonus stamps too as well, which were also like a really key part of rush teams as well. So what you'd normally see happen is like 2 rush teams would face off against each other and nothing would really happen for like the first 3 to 4 minutes of the match. Kind of similar to the Templars versus PL match actually this year. And then you would just see like one team just go charging in and then start the fight. And it's kind of like if you guys play Dota or like a MOBA, it's kind of like an initiation comp from that team, from that game, if you're familiar with that, where you don't have like the best, team fight team, but you have like a team that's really good at initiating onto something out of position and winning the fight from there.
So we've got a cool graph up there with just the Sleipnir through Alliance tournament, and we see the pick rate go up crazy around 7, 8, 9, and it slowly starts dipping around 10, but it still has pretty okay win rate. And then Alliance tournament 12, a lot of people tend to bring it. It's in 60% of the picks, but it only has an abysmal 40% win rate. What's up with that? Like, I'll throw it to either Damascus or Stony or any of our Alliance Tournament pilots, even Alexi. Like, come on, break this down. What happened here? What made Alliance Tournament 12 the death knell for Sleipnirs?
I want to say what happened with 12 and 13 was you had a lot more ships on field. So to a degree, 12 and 13 were really bad for battle cruisers because you had comps varying between the sort of 10 cruisers and a couple of other things to fill out your points. Just everything is durable and it's going to mess everything up. Or a battleship with this massive support wing. And battleships with good support wing you can't rush against because you've got 6 ships, all of which are just going to tackle down your core while those battleships project the damage. And you can't really rush down the cruiser comps because everything's distributed. It's sort of a precursor to what we saw recently with Octodad. And that, it just kind of put a crush onto Sleipnirs. And kind of the battle cruisers and in general that class of ship and that kind of strategy doesn't work when you've got that many more threats or that much more control. And part of why the Sleipnir was so incredibly good was teams didn't know how to play around it. The massive bubble that Sleipnirs had was bound to fail, but now we just see this weird relationship of the more people try and make the Sleipnir work in the meta, the less it seems to work in the meta.
You
Yeah,
really
and
see
also-
it bounce oppositely there for those 3 years where it's like the win rate and the pick rates are opposing to each other. Were there particular, do you remember what the rules changes were that sort of led to those battleship comps that resisted the Sleipnir rush?
I think it was point reductions primarily. I think Sleipnirs used to be a lot cheaper. They used to be around 16 points each, and battleships used to be, I think, 18. I think they were around 20 points actually, sort of earlier on, which is why the Sleipnir used to be like so good prior to sort of 80, 11, 80, 12, I think.
And then when did the links on the command destroyers come out? Was that during Alliance Tournament 14, or was that just after 14 and working into 15? Because I'm sure that played a role as well.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was after Alliance Tournament 14. Yeah, I think it was in
I
the.
think so
It was
too.
in. It was in November. Yeah, so I think Alliance Tournament 15 was the first time we had the burst links on grid.
All right, and then like from there, you can start see like this huge decline in Sleipnir usage because like one of the things, as the guys were saying, one of the great things about the Sleipnir was you could have links on your ship. It did a good amount of damage. It had a good amount of control, but then kind of you don't need it so much anymore when you've got the command destroyers that can do it for so much less or so much fewer points. It kind of opened up what else you could do with it. So that's a pretty neat graph, actually. It just shows how the meta evolves through the Alliance Tournament and what the rule changes do and what different ships do and to how the picks work. And it's pretty cool. Man, I love stats. I'm glad Alexi has compiled all of these for us, and we've made some really nifty charts that we can follow along. And also, if you just think about that graph, when CCB Fozzie joined, you could probably see the win rate for the Sleipnirs going down because he was always flying those crazy Sleipnir ships. I think his last Alliance Warrant was Alliance Warrant 7 as a player.
I think it was Alliance Tournament 8 because he spy bullied the Hydra team.
That is actually
Alliance
true.
Tournament 8, and the Sleipnir that you would have seen on the wall in the Alliance Tournament studio is actually one flown by Fozzie. Because
nice.
all of them are based on actual Fitz and Lost Mails from the Alliance tournaments. So that one was based on a first round loss to Dead Terrorists. But he was basically in that Sleipnir all the way through Alliance Tournament 8 until you defeated Hydra at the end of it. It's
Does
fantastic.
Fozzie also have a 100% win rate? I think I saw that earlier on his character thing that you showed.
I think he might, yeah, because it would only be tracking for 7 and PL did not lose in 7.
Yeah, back in the day when we would win, when we wouldn't explode and die horribly and we could survive to the end.
When you win top 16.
Yeah. Speaking of surviving to the end, we've got a new graph for you: survival rate historically of Alliance Hornet ships and Alliance Hornet different things. Alexi, why don't you break this down for us so we don't get the graph information wrong?
Okay, so this is one of those that is kind of a graph I'm really a big fan of, but other people kind of look at it and think, "What the hell have you done?" Basically, looking at ship survival rate, which is probably the more actual sort of tournament interesting, but behind that is baseliner casualties, so the number of crew that die on the ships, basically. Because of course, whenever we decide as Capsuleers to actually have a fight, we do kind of slaughter lots and lots of people just for the sake of good fights. I think it's well over 1 million people have died for the Alliance tournament at this point, which to be fair isn't too many when you think about it like that. But you see, there's, for the most part, it actually stays fairly in line with if more ships survive, less people die. But you have a bit of discrepancy because you had really short tournaments in 9 and 10. They only had like 63 matches each, and you had like only 95 matches in 7 and 8. For reference, like the modern double elimination format runs to the better part of 147 matches if you take all of the best of series. So it's quite a lot more matches. But all of those NPCs dying, we actually see it drops quite considerably over recent years because we're changing what ships we're flying. We moved a fair bit away from the battleship dominant meta, of 13 and 14. As you moved into battle cruisers, which are more crew efficient, you see that drop down in 15. And now in 16, we've got a lot of Triglavian hulls, which, and this is where I show my absolute lore nerd, have a really low crew count. Relative to their size of ship. They have lower than some cruisers actually, so, and really good survival rates. But yeah, I'm an absolute lore nerd, and so behind making this graph is a hell of a lot of work finding crew numbers for every single ship in the game. So I'm really happy with it, but it's also not the most sort of, you can't work out based on that which team's going to win or which ship to bring in a tournament. So
I mean, the thing is, even though people do die horrible, horrible deaths, and there's a reason why non-capsuleers call us eggers, they just hate us. One of the neat things about that graph is an Alliance Hornet 13, which was, I think it was like one of the Tinker heavy years, you would see like ships just didn't die. Like the Alliance Hornet, the NPCs probably just loved Alliance Hornet 13 and would love to go back to a Tinker meta, so their families don't die horrible deaths. But speaking of dying horrible deaths, Alliance Hornet is all about explosions. Sorry, Tinkers, but you're gone. The rules changed, didn't let you go. Another rule change that happened, though, is the amount of uniques that you could bring. Let's see, Damasus, you have a unique or two in your stable. Breakthrough, like, what are your favorite uniques that you've seen, and what are the most useful uniques, actually?
Well, it was really interesting to see the Vangel come out this year, because it kind of fit into the way the whole meta shifted, which I'm under the impression was, really heavily influenced by the Triglavian ships. So it found a place that it didn't really have a lot in previous tournaments. The Rabisu is obviously super strong, and people are really afraid of it for good reason, because of how strong it makes. It just adds. It's one of those ships that really just takes the place of, say, a Guardian, and is just a lot better in many ways. And then there's the Atana as well. It's interesting looking at this graph, though. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at something different than what's on the screen. But I see that the Malice is actually the most picked unique, according to the data that's been collected. And I'm wondering if that's because of it was brought a lot in pairs. I don't remember. Does anyone else remember if that's the case?
Oh, not
yeah.
just pairs.
PO actually bought 3 of them in a match before.
There
Oh,
are
that's
people where they
when you could
bought
do
4.
3 of the same.
Yeah.
There are actually
That's
some
really
who
showing the
bought-
bling.
We lost that match, by the way. But yeah, so there was a rule set, though. Like, the rules changed over the years. And Alliance Tournaments 10, you could bring 3 of the same hull type, and you could just bring as many uniques as you wanted. Just uniques out the woohoo. And one of the most powerful ships was the Malice, because that Alliance Tournament meta was all about having like a core of 2 battleships and then a second core of like 5 or 6 assault frigates. So you could just do whatever, catch a logistics, pin people down, screen people. And the Malice was such a cool little ship. It was the Alliance Tournament 10, I think, second place ship. And it's just like a Vengeance, but better in every way. And it's a Vengeance with like a little bit of curse in it. It doesn't have like tracking disruptor things, but it's got like these little newts. So you've flown a Malice in Alliance Tournament before, right?
Yeah, I think I've flown it in the 80. I've definitely flown it in practices a lot.
So what does it do, and what makes it so good? Why is it like the most picked?
Oh, the Malice is kind of like a Vengeance and a Sentinel in a way combined into one. It gets a bonus to newt amount, the same as a Sentinel. So each small newt you have actually newts the same as a medium newt, or 2 small newts at once. And then it also has the Tank of a Vengeance, because it has the great assault frigate resistances from the Amar profile, which is like a very great like omni resistance on armor. Then it also gets an extra 20% on top of that from the ship itself. And then it's just I think it has 2 mids and 5 lows, if I remember correctly. It might be 4 lows. I haven't actually flown a Malice in a while, but
I think that's fine. I think that's because it's absolutely disgusting as a ship. Like, it shouldn't.
Yeah. So it's like a Vengeance, except you get even more tank on it. And then you also, normally what people do with it now, at least, is you just fit 5 newts on it, like MWD injector, or you can run a scram plus 2 NOS, 3 newts. And what you do is you just send that on top of the logistics. If you can get it on top of it, it's just like a blood sucking leech, and you just like, you can't really kill it. Like, it's really hard to kill if you've got a Logi in range to rep it, because it has like the resistance profile you would expect from something like really tanky like a Sacrilege, while also having a really tiny signature radius. So it's really hard to get rid of it, and because you've got those small newts, they cycle so fast as well. And it's really hard to deal with. Like, even if you do the 2 NOS 3 newt fit, your newt is cycling like every 2 seconds. So like, even if they inject back up, it's like, oh, my cap is gone again, like after 4 seconds, and then they've got like so much dead time where they can't do anything.
I'm surprised we didn't see it this year, because it's the counterpart to the Vangel, right? So it seems like it would have fit in very nicely. And especially with the assault damage controls, like that was one of the things that made the Vandal really good. Except one died and didn't have one fit facepalm. But is there a reason you think that we saw the Vandal but not the Malice? Because you could sneak it in there without even expending very many points and still get some of the great like features of that ship.
I think the one unique rule is probably why. I think the Vanguard just brings a lot more than the Malice if you can only bring one ship, because not only does it nuke really hard, it's like it does almost the same. I think it does almost the same damage as a Sacrilege with the launchers. I think it has 8 effective launchers.
It's got more damage than Sacrilege by about 20% if you have all the launchers fit.
Right, because I think it has a 50% rate of fire bonus, right? So it has 4 launches, but they're actually 8, and the Sacrilege has 5% damage bonus, or has a rate of fire damage bonus. I think the Sac has like 8.25 or something. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it does really close to the same damage as a Sacrilege anyway, while also neuting with 2 medium newts. It's the same as like 2 medium newts you get from a curse. And it also has like the same tank as a Sacrilege as well, if not more.
Maybe what we need to see is a rule change where it's not the number of uniques, but the amount of points you can expend in uniques. So that might give more room for bringing the frigates again.
That would be super neat, actually. So you could have like 2 or 3 frigates, like 1 cruiser, stuff like that. That would be actually quite interesting.
Kind of similar to the logistics, how you can bring 1 cruiser or 2 frigates.
Yeah, it'd be cool if the rule was that like I know we had like the Highlander rule this year, 1 year, but if the rule was like you can bring uniques and you can bring duplicate uniques, but you can't bring different uniques. So you could bring like 2 Utus or like 2 Vangals or something. But because the really powerful ones anyway, the logistics, the Etana and Rabisu, you can't bring duplicates anyway because of the rules. So I think that would probably be fair.
One of the neat things of the graph was that if you brought a Fiend, Utu, Maracha, Victor, or State Issue Raven, you won that match. You might have lost the ship, but you definitely won the match. And those are some of my favorite things. Obviously, a small sample size, but some of my favorite little factoids. Also, the Adrestia apparently sucks. It's only won like one of the matches that has been brought in. I theory crafted that setup with the Adrestia, so it's garbage, obviously. But talking about different meta, different rules, we've got another neat graph that kind of goes over how the Alliance Tournament has changed in terms of what sort of ships you bring, like how the meta has evolved either by rules set or just by different trends. I know this year the trend was a lot with neuting. Part of that was because neuting is a great counter to things like the Leshak and other the Triglavian ships. There's really good synergy there, and the recons went down in points. But yeah, we can take a look at sort of the pick rate by the tournaments of these different ships. Maybe go through it and maybe have some of the Alliance Tournament guys, the pilots, kind of break down what exactly was going on, or maybe some like historians and stuff. Like what should have happened here? So, well, Alexei, why don't you first explain the graph for us, because it does look like that happy rainbow octopus a little bit if you look at Alliance 111 as the head of the octopus.
Yeah, these graphs were referred to behind the scenes as the rainbow octopuses because, well, obvious reasons. But I think they're really interesting graphs. You've got to compensate a bit for, like as was mentioned earlier, you've just got low pick rates because of the low number of matches in 7 through 10. But it's interesting seeing the priorities of teams and what they've picked changing throughout the years. Like it used to be pretty much the surge of damage and bursts initially, as you see sort of 7 through 9 is really dominated by those. That was the Sleipnir meta that we were talking about earlier, where you would pretty much just rush with those because they're burst ships. They're just a lot of primary damage, and you kind of just see logistics and things like that tinkering along at the bottom. And damage was everything last year. We have just been focusing so much more and more on that, and then we hit comps last year. You ignore E-War, you ignore logistics, you just bring the damage to win. But that has dropped off entirely in the last year. kind of because we're focusing on fewer number of damage ships, and whenever you see damage drop, it is because you've got that focus on a fewer number of damage ships as a rule. It's been proven statistically over every AT, if you don't bring many, if you just don't invest many points in damage, you kind of lose horrendously. But we've seen some interesting trends, like E-War was dead in 15, has been revived in 16, and I'm going to hand this over to some other people because there is so much going on in this, if you know what was going on in the ATs. And it's a really interesting Rainbow Octopus.
Yeah, I think you see like a huge spike of anti-tackle between 10 and 11, and I think that's when we started having the we were allowed to bring 3 of the same ship, and we had 12-man teams. I think between 11, it was 11 and 12, right? It was 12-man teams of like 3 different ships each. So there was a lot more tackle, and so there was a lot more need for anti-tackle as well, because you can see the big spike in tackle as well as the huge spike in anti-tackle.
Yeah,
And it's
so
interesting to see how just that spike in the damage we're talking about. You can really see how everything else correlates with that, where you've got super high damage bursts, and at the same time E-War dropped off because people were able to win with just raw damage, and that was the Octodad, right? So we had just like it could just shred everything, and there was not enough. You couldn't bring enough E-War to deal with that. But then with the changes to the rules, you saw everything else kind of normalize back down to where it was before, except that E-War actually went up. So I think this year it looks like we had the most E-War ever, and it definitely felt that way, both from the comps that I was in and a lot of the stuff that we faced and that we saw in the actual tournament.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the E-War has gone up a little bit. Part of the reason probably is because the better counter to E-Wars, at least back in the day, was just bringing all of one race. So like if you gambled wrong on your jammers, you would essentially screw up and lose, and nobody wants to put their alliance tournament just on guesswork. But I'm going to bring in the darlings of this year's alliance tournament, and Very, the captain of the Tri team. You've probably done your fair amount of theory crafting. Can you explain why? This year, the ECM, we saw like a big uptick in it.
So I feel like this year we saw a massive uptake in ECMS because, in my opinion, for my team anyway, Dolshak and Vedmak were pick or ban every single match. And they're both gold ship. So a lot of our comps are very gold-green focused. And so if you knew what your opponents were going to bring, in our case, we knew a lot of them were going to bring gold-green because we felt that was the strongest thing this year, we completely stacked ECM against that. And throughout our practices, we found that one of the greatest counters to a Leshak is incredibly heavy neuting. And we saw a massive uptick in that this year, in my opinion, thanks to 2 ships, the Armageddon and the Praxis. With the Praxis being worth only 17 points and being able to fit an entire rack of heavy neuts on it, you're able to spend a low amount of points to completely neuter a flag Leshak, which we tried to do in, I want to say, our second match against Vidra. And it worked rather well.
Yeah, because so for those that haven't really flown the Leshak that much on TQ, it's got this cool Entropic Disintegrator. It's a weapon that ramps up damage the longer it's shooting a target. But if it turns off by either going out of range or by not being able to fire from no cap, then it has to rebuild that ramp up. So it can do a lot of damage after it's been firing for like a minute or so. But if you kind of make it start and stop quite a bit, then the damage isn't all that impressive.
Exactly. So a lot of our comps really focused around trying to stop the Leshak in any possible way from spooling up, whether that be from switching gold jams from between that and the Vedmak to stop both of their spooling times, or just completely neuting it out, leaving it unable to do anything at all, not even turn on its hardeners. And I feel like we saw also like a decrease in the damage graph, like less damage ships this year, is just because you can put only 19 points into the Leshak, and there you have almost 4K damage depending on how you fit it in just 19 points. So you have so many other points to fit into other ships, especially into E-War and control comps.
That's a pretty nifty way of looking at things. So Alexi, I know you guys and the Laserhawks team had I think the only flagship Leshak. Was that why you guys chose it, so you could fit the crazy neuts on it, or just because it was super versatile?
Flagship Praxis. It was because it was super versatile. Of course, with the rules for this year, you couldn't actually bring newts and things on the Praxis. This is why everyone didn't have a flagship Balgorn. You couldn't bring the newts and the webs. We had a flagship Praxis because it could be really powerful in any comp we wanted it to be powerful in. And particularly, there was a bit of foresight towards the final weekends, and the fact that that was a flagship that you could bring in a shield comp and it would be powerful, in an armor comp and it would be powerful, in potentially that all-in sort of core slayer comp and it would be powerful. It would just be a threat in whatever you wanted it to be.
So moving on from that, we can break down the meta a little bit more and how it's evolved through the Alliance tournament. I remember Alliance Tournament 8, it felt super easy because no one really knew exactly what to take. And there were just a lot of fluff teams. But starting around Alliance Tournament 9 and 10, everyone became super competitive, which was such a bummer for the Pandemic Legion team because we couldn't just beat up on unprepared teams. But we can throw up a graph called pick rate by tournament, which kind of goes through the exact ship classes, not what they do, but the exact ship class and how it escalated through the years. I know Suetonia talked about a little bit around the Lions tournament between 10 and 11 when you can introduce the people to 12 pilots and get a 3 of a certain ship class, but you still only had 100 points, which is why you can see a massive spike for frigate. And that includes assault frigates and stuff like that. What about the other little squigglies on here, guys? So why don't you kind of explain a little bit about what this means about how the meta has changed and evolved over the years?
I think in AT12 there was there was the buffs to, was it heavy assault? No, I think it was after AT12 where heavy assault cruisers were. No, there was after AT11, right? Because I know Hydra came second place. We got dunked by PL, and then afterwards the Ishtar was buffed, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so that was that's when a lot of the pirate cruisers got buffed up as well. I think sort of 2000. That might be a bit early actually. I think that was before AT13 and between AT12 and 13. But anyway, I think there was a lot of rebalance around the cruisers around then. That was the Retribution expansion as well. Before, I think the only cruisers you really saw were like Vexes and like a few other niche ones. But after that, I think like CCP basically buffed all the cruisers and Navy cruisers in the game, so they were really good. And then that's when you saw like a lot more like Ruptures, Thoraxes, Vexes, Maulers, all those ships being used. So the fact that you needed to bring 12 slots as well, I think also helped, along with the frigates. There's also another interesting spike around AT15 where you see a huge like battle cruiser and cruiser spike, and I think that's because of like how all-in-ish and obviously the BC reductions that we saw.
Yeah, so most of these peaks and valleys, it just comes all down to the rule set. EVE players want to min and max absolutely everything, and Alliance Torrent's theory crafters, I'm sure Damasus and Var, you guys can attest to this. You guys absolutely min max the crap out of your setups. Does this graph kind of go by what you guys have experienced in your theory crafting?
In my opinion, yes. Like this year, we see like cruisers above everything else. I feel like that's just because of how versatile they were this year. For example, recon ships and hacks are the same amount of points, 11 points. So if you have a comp that focuses on hacks, you can easily switch out ECM if you want to, or you can switch in a curse, for example, as well, and still have basically the same core comp. Kind of like what we saw with Try. We had that same core comp, but because a lot of ships were very, very versatile, especially cruiser hulls, we're able to just plug things in and out and still have the base core comp that we practice so much. And battleships ticked up a little bit this year, and I feel like that's just because of just mostly the Leshak once again, like the Leshak, the Praxis, the Armageddon, the Balgorn. With the Leshak, you had that low point ship that was the core of your DPS, and you can just throw a couple more T1 battleships in there and still have as very, very solid comp with three battleships, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, I was just looking at the battleship line, how it does a full roller coaster, and then there's all these other things going on, and it really shows how, like you said, the rules changes kind of push for a particular set of ships being viable to fill out your comp in terms of the points. And then, of course, the actual balance passes and additions of ships and changes to ships and everything are happening as well. So you've got these two sort of variable multipliers. So it really shakes things up. And I hope that we do continue, like if, another 6 years or something, we can add to this graph. I hope to see that, continuing to do this, because everyone could kind of argue for that you want the most balanced and sort of fair feeling rule set, but then with the min-maxing of the EVE community, it could stagnate. So it's awesome to see how much things get shooken up by, like I said, the rules plus the changes to the game itself.
It's amazing to see sort of just how much of a state of flux things are in, and that we're talking about tinkering as a rule with 1 or 2 points here and there each year that's so massively fluxing this. One thing I did want to just touch on before we moved on from this was 13 and 14, the massive surge of destroyers, which I think kind of comes with bringing T3 destroyers out, and kind of before they were also nerfed back into being reasonable. And they were pretty much go-to in a lot of tackle wings at that point, because they could fulfill both heavy tackle and really good anti-tackle roles. And then you watch them just dip away in 15 when all that went away. And the return in 16 has actually been from a different ship in the destroyer class. It's mainly been the command destroyers that have come in to replace the lack of battle cruisers for Lynx.
And you can see in that 13 and 14 how the battleships were complemented well by those Tech 3 destroyers.
Yeah, another thing as well is we used to see a lot more sort of, because of the whole downpour thing that used to happen like around 8012, 8013, we saw a lot more anti-support destroyers like the the Flycatcher, the Heretic, and Jackdaws to snipe away at Maulises and things like that. And with them declining as well, I think that's also why we've seen a bit of a decline in the destroyers.
So for all the people that say the Alliance Tournament doesn't change from year to year, we've got a squiggly line graph to show you that it does. If you don't even like graphs, you just know that squiggles mean change. So there you go. So we'll be talking a little bit more about the Alliance Tournament 16 specifically meta coming up. But for now, we're going to go to a quick break, show you some cool ads from over the Alliance Tournament history. And also, we've got the poll results for you. You guys, for some reason, love the Etana. Geez, I wonder if that's because there are like none left and we always lose. And we've lost more Etanas than anyone else. Shout out. But yeah, we can, so looking at the list, so the Etana, everyone's favorite ship, apparently. Slowly after that, the Vindicator. Oh yeah, I actually love the Vindicator just because the absolute disgusting amount of damage it can deal. And then after that, you've got the Golem. I think you guys are crazy if you voted for the Golem. I think it's just one person voting for the Golem over and over and over again. The Hurricane Fleet issue, the Vargar, I know who that is, and the Paladin, I also know who that is. You guys have chimed in. Anyways,
That's
we're
a
gonna
lot
go
of
to yeah, it is a lot of Marauders. You guys are sick for liking Marauders. Most people hate them. But yeah, we're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to show you a bit of a highlight of some advertisements that have gone through the years, and pay close attention because we might be asking you to pick your favorite. Who knows? Maybe stuff will happen to you if you do. Anyways, we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Durhadur, Reddit CEO Emeritus. My interests include streaming. Hey, speaking of streaming, you should check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Durhadur. MultidollarMediaEmpire.com. Check out my Twitter, twitter.com/Durhadur. MultidollarMediaEmpire.com.
Warp drive active.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
But sometimes more unexpected sounds grab our attention.
Yeah!
Like this desert rain frog.
Yeah! Boy!
Docking request denied.
Yeah, boy. All right. So we've got some great ads for you. And, as customary for this segment, we're going to have a poll to throw out there for you. You guys can vote for your favorite ad that you liked. I don't know. For me, the Black Legion one gets stuck in my head all the time. The little mini dancing Elo Knight. It just makes me happy. I don't know what's wrong with me or why. But guys, just you can vote for it, and we'll catch up with the people as our guests, and they'll chime in through this segment as well. But for now, we're going to get down to that good. No more Alliance Tournament history. No more talking about things that happened 8 or 10 years ago. No more talking about of when Pandemic Legion were good. We get to talk about what happened this year specifically. And we touched on a little bit in the first segment. And Barry and Damasus were talking about some of the key ships that saw, really good use this year and kind of what defined what the meta is. But we're going to just go quickly to Anvari so we can talk about what he thought about the meta as just a whole.
I thought this year's meta was actually really interesting. And my favorite rule this year was the single unique rule. And in my opinion, that helped a team like Try, who had no uniques, get to the point that we did. Because in our NT matches, for example, we made NT choose between bringing their flagship or bringing a unique. And without that rule in place, I feel like we would have seen a lot more AT ships in our matches than we really wanted to. But overall, I thought this meta was really interesting and really fun to play with as well, just because being a first-time captain and being thrown into such a new meta, I really enjoyed theory crafting all of these new crafts and being able to try so many new things without people just saying, wow, that's really dumb, without testing it first. With everything just thrown up into the air, it allowed a lot more creative, just a lot more creativity to be put in place, in my opinion.
All right, so we've got a slide really quick talking about some of the core changes that happened this year that kind of define the meta. We already talked about a little bit of it with the Leshak, the new Triglavian ship that just counts as a normal, it's kind of got the stats as a pirate cruiser, but it's only got worth 19 points. So Tony, why don't you break down some of these rule changes that we saw this year and how it helped define what we saw in Alliance Tournament 16?
So moving away from the battleship to the frigate changes, I think one of the biggest changes really was the point reduction we saw on the Tech 2 logistic frigates and the Tech 1 logistics frigates. Because I think in AT 14, AT 15, they were just kind of on the edge. There were a few teams that really liked to bring them. Like I think the Ronin and Test Alliance really liked to bring these Tech 2 logistic frigates, but they were more niche. But they're just kind of right on the edge, and then reducing them by 2 points for the Tech 2 frigates. Tech 2 Logi frigates and by 1 point for the Tech 1 Logi frigate really sort of brought them in as a viable alternative, especially since Logi frigates are actually really good against sort of the teams that try to kill. They're really good against like the Core Slayer comp because they're so fast and have small SIGs, and they also can tank really well against like the Leshak damage, since the Leshak probably isn't going to be able to track them if they're not tackled. We also saw Tech 1 cruisers minus 1 point, but I don't think that really changed all that much. And then we have some E-War changes too. The recon ship change was really huge, as well as Anvari mentioned, bringing them down to the same point cost as heavy assault cruisers made them much more interchangeable with them, which was a big. I don't think we saw that many strategic cruisers. We did see like a Jamgu as kind of a replacement for when the Rook and Falcon were banned out. We also saw, the occasional Loki and the new Legions too. Although I think that's more due to ban evasion rather than the point reduction.
If I could just chime in on that with, like you brought up a really good point about the interchangeability that allowed for such quick changes without disrupting the whole comp, because there have been historically certain point values that are hard to fit in because it leaves you with an odd number of points and then you can't use them all and it gets really messy. So, say you downgrade one thing in order to get that recon in, but then you have some other odd number of points, and it makes it more difficult. So having that interchangeability, I think, was another reason that there was a lot of sort of, I mean, there was definitely a meta that things fell into, but there was a lot of variety within it. So that's a really cool attribute to have within the point structure.
Yeah, and as we were chatting about the Leshak, kind of cheap, the Praxis also super cheap, and as Alexi was saying, is very adaptable, because this alliance tournament, I think the last 3 years is when they did it. So it was sponsored by a certain faction, and that faction got a point reduction in there. So this year was the SOCT, the Society of Conscientious Thought. So the Praxis was cheap, the Sunesis was cheap, and the Gnosis was cheap. I actually thought we'd see more Sunesises just based on how cheap they were.
They were discovered to be horrible in practice.
Paper Thin turns out to be absolutely garbage. Can't tackle, can't do anything. But so, Damascus, why don't you break down a little bit about some of these things? How did this affect the Alliance Tournament 16 meta? Obviously, we saw quite a few Praxises, and the Battlecruiser meta seemed to kind of move out of the way because those +2 points just made it too expensive.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few changes. Obviously, just the addition of the Leshak and it being very valuable for the points costs is pretty much the main driving factor for the entire meta, I would say, because everything kind of worked around that. It's just such a strong ship in the tournament environment. So you have that, then you have the Praxis, which is another, it can fill out your battleship core depending on what you're trying to achieve there, and it's got a low point. So with that, the min-maxing of the Eve players and the comp theory crafters, it's easy to fit in there. I'm not convinced I don't know, it's got its pros and its cons, definitely, because it's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And like you said, the battle cruisers, that's kind of a reactive change from the Octodad being overwhelmingly strong. So making that comp way harder to, you have to invest a lot more to get something similar. So that sort of got rid of that extremely strong meta. And then just the other little changes, like the assault damage controls is a really cool thing that you have to keep in mind. Both that a target you're shooting could be popping it or could be baiting you, and when you need to pop your own. And then back to Tech 1 combat drones. Drones are in a really weird place in the tournament because if there's no middle ground, it's kind of like if there's only Tech 1 combat drones, they just really don't feel very strong or effective. But if you allow the Tech 2, it becomes ridiculously overwhelming, like the drone swarms we saw when that was a strong meta. But yeah.
Yeah, the drone meta was absolutely terrible to deal with, just because it was so unbannable. If you bet, just because by virtue of there being so many drone ships out there. But I think maybe the Highlander rule will actually change things. If you haven't been keeping up with the Alliance tournaments with our great lexicon, we've added a new one called the Highlander rule, which is essentially, actually, I'll let Alexi describe this, as well as talking about the flagship changes. He already talked about a little bit of it, and about why we saw more Leshaks and fewer Balgorns. And so Alexi, take it away, talk about flagships, and then talk about the Highlander rule a little bit and how that changed things for this year.
Okay, well, I'll start with the Highlander rule, actually, because this is a rule that massively upset the meta, and it's the name the Highlander rule comes from what similar rules in other games have been called, because the rule is there can only be one. You cannot bring duplicates of anything within your comps. So you're looking at a team comp of 10 different ships. You can repeat on the same hull, so you can have a Hawk, a Harpy, and a Merlin, and Whiptail, and Worm. 2 complete different ships. But yeah, anyway, you can have different ships on the same hull in your comp, but you've got to have unique named ships. And that's obviously upset the meta a lot, especially when we had a meta last year that involved 8 duplicates as kind of one of the more dominant comps. Flagships, however, is a change that changes there have pretty much been a massive hammer brought down on top of the Balgorn that had dominated since the flagship rules came in, and to a degree since everyone worked out why the good teams were winning with the Balgorn. No newts, no NOS, no webs, and what is a Balgorn bonus for? Exactly all of those things, and without it, it's still a really powerful ship, but there's no point making it a flagship without them, because you lose particularly the breakpoint that the Balgorn had, which was if you had to the bias webs or with abyssal rolls, you could do it on far more different kinds of webs nowadays, but you could warp your Balgorn at 0 and guaranteedly web anything on the opposing team, which pretty much meant you warped your Balgorn at 0 and webbed your opposing Logi immediately. Putting 2 webs on them immediately was a massive thing, and so CCP decided Alliance Tournament Balgorn, it's not fun anymore. We've done this, we're going to do something else. So they got rid of newts and NOS, got rid of webs, and left us with every other valid high slot module. So you can still go for officer guns, you can still go for smart bombs, and you can still go for really pimping out the damage on your ship. You can get good C-bows. The rest of your E-War is still there, so you can go for purple ECM if you're feeling particularly vindictive one day. And there was kind of a preemptive nerf, actually, because there's no ECM this year. Is it no ECM on the flagship rules?
I think so, because I think someone was complaining about not being able to do a Purple Widow, but
yeah, because it was the preemptive nerf, because this year is the first year you could have T2 flagships, which combined with the abyssal mods meant you could have had some insane flagships. All of this, however, kind of got brushed out of the way because the Leshak is too good in the current meta. Leshak is insane. Leshak doesn't even have the ability to have faction damage mods or anything yet. The Leshak is pretty much being picked as a flagship, and was pretty much entirely picked as a flagship because your flagship dodges bans and dodges bans in the final weekend, and just being able to bring your Leshak all of the time. As I'm pretty much going to throw to Anvari on this, because you wrote an AAR on bringing your flagship all of the time as a Leshak, didn't you?
Yes, I did. That's just because, in my opinion, the Leshak is a pick or ban every single match. If you don't bring it, you lose. If you bring it, you hopefully win, but you might lose that too. It just does so much damage for so little points. It's stupid not to bring that out. Blinged is fuck. Throwing an officer smart bomb on there, getting blinged out reppers, getting a nice tracking computer, and you can move mountains or heaven and earth with that. And it's just amazing what it can do. Also disgusting what it can do, especially when it's used against you.
Yeah, we saw very much the Alliance Tournament 16 seemed to be everything was built around the Leshak. You saw some non-flagship Balgorns. You saw a lot of nuding, just everything under the sun. A lot of tracking disruptors, even in terms of ECM. Lots of, as Anvari says, the gold jammers. Those are the Amarian jammers. Just so good at dealing with all of these the Leshak, and it seemed like everything was built to counter that, and then to counter the counters to that. So when you guys kind of went through your theory crafting on it, Damascus, I know you guys took a sacrilege quite often, and you would get to flying it, and that was essentially just like a heavy screen to keep the Leshak or one of the battleship cores in place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a bitch to try to shoot a sacrilege, especially with this all damage controls now. So it's a good pick to be that thorn in the side of a battleship that's trying to get in range. And I mean, it also, like you said, everything was sort of built around the Leshak. And so it also being yellow did give some resistance to ECM, because you have to choose, okay, do I jam something like the sacrilege that's holding my battleship down because I need to get it through, or because I don't want to shoot it, or do I jam the Leshak, try to shot off its guns? You're kind of bouncing between the two and everything. But then again, you end up, I definitely found that the meta fell down this kind of black hole of everything. Like you said, everything was so focused around the Leshak that all the counters and all the different comps that people would try to beat the Leshak were specifically based off of it, not based on taking like a whole different approach. And I still wonder, because we never really saw anything pop up, if there was room for completely different strategies, especially later in the tournament, when everyone had settled so much. The surprise factor of having something completely out of the box that may or may not have been effective. I would have liked to see a couple things attempted at least.
Yeah, it could have been pretty nifty. And that's the problem with theory crafting. You can't really predict what people or pilots in the Alliance tournament are going to take. You can predict what you want to take, but that's not necessarily what everyone else begins taking. And I know Suetonia has experienced that. I know for sure I have. I'm sure Anvari and Damascus have. Like when you do internal testing, you kind of get pigeonholed into certain ideas, and you just go down this rabbit hole thinking, oh, the Alliance tournament's going to be all about this, 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 and this. And then by week 2, you're like, oh crap. There's a whole new side of things that people are taking that we have to, come up with a game plan with. And it's very frustrating because it might not be the best thing, but it's what everyone's taking, and it might beat what you have as well. So that's one of my favorite things of the Alliance tournament. That last weekend, or the last 2 weekends, where you're just stressing out, losing hair, losing sleep, trying to come up with a setup that is going to take you to that final weekend. And kind of going through a little bit more of the meta trends of Alliance Tournament 16, with the rise in points of logistic ships that Suetonia mentioned for Tech 2 logistic ships, we saw a lot more teams take these Tech 1 and Tech 2 logistics frigates. I know the Tri team kind of loved to see their Tech 2 logistics frigates. I know Starfleet Commander and the Volta team, they seem to always be taking Tech 2 logistics frigates. It just frees up so many points for your ships. Suetonia, why don't you break down a little bit the prevalence of the Tech 1 and Tech 2 logistics frigates this year?
I think it's twofold. I think the first part is people want to invest a lot more into their core, especially the triple battleship core is using up, close to 60 points if you're bringing like the Vindicator, Lashak, and Balgon combo, or if you Tech 1 mixed in, is like around the 60-point mark, which doesn't really leave much room for a Tech 2 logistics if you want to throw in, links. Even if you use like double command destroyer, you're already can't really fit it in anything else on that core, like especially if you want something like a curse in there or a sacrilege. You probably always want to bring a Vedmak in every single game as well if you can. I don't think I've ever seen a team voluntarily not bring a Vedmak if they could. And I think the second point is the fact that they're really good at countering sort of the triple battleship Lashak core and the core Slayer teams, just because they have low signature radius and they're a bit faster too, so they're pretty hard to catch, and they can mitigate a lot of damage from ships like the Lashak. And because there's 2 of them as well, if one of them gets caught, it's still really bad. But it's not the kind of the end of the world, especially when we see teams like, rely on like say one Vedmak to tackle something. If there's 2 of them, then at least one of them can get away. Like the Deacon can maybe get away while the Thalia dies, etc.
Yeah, and we've actually got a pretty neat graph called the for the most picked logistic ships, and you can just see how effective or how prevalent these things have been. GM Spider, you said that you had gotten to explode a few ships. Did any of these guys ever go outside the boundary while you were a ref for it?
Oh yeah, a bunch of them. Luckily, we have the system do that for us automatically now, so I don't have to worry about it because it happens quite a bit, more often than it really should. But yeah, the other cases were a super edge case. It was weird. We had to blow up a couple guys just to kind of make the match end the way we wanted it to, due to a rule violation, and there was like points. It was a mess, but yeah.
That was QUL thinking they discovered a new thing in the meta and activating micro jump beacons too early, and then they didn't stop shooting when they were told they'd lost the match.
Yeah, so what happened there is that they kept shooting after we told everyone to stop. That meant they were ahead on points. We had to kill a couple ships just to kind of balance it out so we could end the match and declare the other team a winner. And then after that, they were basically just told to file a ticket, and we would, basically reimburse everything and make sure that, this effectively, didn't happen, so to speak.
I think we all like to think that match didn't happen.
Yeah.
My favorite part about that is if they didn't just screw up and use the MJDs too early, they would have won. Like they seem to be in such a better position.
Yeah, that is exactly what we thought at the time. Had they activated it at the right time, then the match probably would have gone in their favor. So
think even if they got caught, it would have gone in their favor. I think Bastion only had 6 ships, so it was weird.
But most importantly, they proved Ithaca Hawk wrong, as he predicted that Bastion would be winless, and in fact, they won.
Oh, there you go. Something good came out of it then.
So yeah, just talking about a few explosions, a few of the smaller ships, the very high skill cap on that Deacon and Thalia. Obviously, the trend here is to take armor logistic ships. Generally, when people take armor, so they could free up the mid slots for utility. And Vari Damasis, is that kind of why you guys liked armor ships?
I liked armor ships for a lot of reasons. It did free up a lot of those mids for utility, and because of the immense E-War meta that I like to think we saw was going to happen, we prepped a lot of our comps to be that very armor focused. Make sure you have cap boosters and everything. Make sure you have C-bows on nearly everything, which didn't work out for us the first match of Vidra, but that's a whole nother story. And just freeing up all those mid slots really allowed us to play the meta a lot more than if we were in Shield.
Yeah, I agree. We ended up sort of discovering more and more how effective the E-War was, and there were comps that we started to stack it really heavily onto. And again, it comes right back to what we were just talking about a little while ago, was everything stemming from the Leshak. Then you build the rest of the comp. You got the recon ship point value reduction. Everything just kind of fell together so that there's a lot more armor, and there's a lot more mid slots, and there's a lot more opportunity to bring bonus to E-War ships, both for neuting and like weapon disruption and whatnot. So everything just kind of fell into place, and teams that made better use of it often did well with it.
So we saw a brief but short kind of resurgence of, I guess, what we would define as a tinker. In previous years, a tinker was just using a Tengu logistics, which obviously was banned this year, and it would require so much more button mashing, and it was very stressful. But this year we saw battleship cores cap feeding onto like something like a basilisk or even a scimitar. Alexi, why don't you just briefly break down how effective that tinker was and why people tried to take it?
I think a lot of people looked at Tinkers this year with the fact that teams couldn't quite muster as much DPS, and they weren't necessarily thinking about what the Leshak could do when they could do that. They're looking at the fact that ECM was looking to be a bit more dominant and trying to do things like imitate Purple Mistress from previous years, but Highlander Rule, of course, stops you bringing things like that. And it's an odd thing because we saw a lot of teams try and do that, try and bring in that sort of thing from, I think it was something emerging last year. It was kind of emerging, this quad bomber or more tinker comps. We were seeing a touch of them at the latter end of last year, but Octodad kind of just beat them out. And this year we saw a lot of people try them, but the Leshak and the ships that you often put with it, things like the Vedmark, and not just that, but a lot of teams realizing that you can bring things like ECM bursts, which are insanely powerful against tinkers, just crushed them this year whenever they got brought. The amount of neuting control, particularly in the comps this year, was insane compared to previous years, and demolished anyone who tried to bring a tinker.
Yeah, so in Alliance Tournament 10, I believe it was, we had kind of a tinker type thing going on, and the Hunter Loaded team, which got to the finals and lost to Starfleet Commander's team, they ended up having a bunch of ECM bursts, and it kept breaking our chain over and over again. It was so frustrating, and it's so cool to see a tactic that was used so long ago come back into the mainstay. And like you were saying, Alexi, a few newts, pretty okay to deal with on a tinker. Like a newts all over the place, like newts for days, not so much. So Tinker's kind of known for putting people to sleep, but what doesn't put people to sleep are ads. And we've got the results in from you guys voting for your favorite ads, and we're gonna just quickly show what the results are. My goodness, I think the PL team won. Yeah, boy. The Herder came in the second, and then Black Legion came in third. So Dancing Elo Knight is at least in some people's hearts, but the PL Yeah Boy kind of goes in number one. So we've got a little bit of a treat for you guys. We're gonna kind of throw highlights from the last few Alliance tournaments up there, just the finals, so you can see these crazy guys going at it, wiry, like haggard pilots making some of the best decisions EVE Online has to offer. Then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of our favorite moments from the Alliance tournament with some captain interviews as well.
But sometimes more unexpected sounds grab our attention.
Yeah!
Like this desert rain frog.
Yeah! Boy!
Okay, the match is underway. I'm looking at one of these stealth bombers just like you are, a Manticore, and there the bombs away.
There they go.
On the way to the Circle of Two team. We'll
and
have
the
to see what
destroyer's
happens.
burning out.
The destroyer's on the way away from the field. There's the bombs. No destroyers down. Significant damage done. No drones dead, I don't think. And right now I'm looking at one of the CO2 sabers, and the only one left, as a matter of fact, and he's not doing any shooting at all. Most likely he doesn't have a lock. At least Randolph in that Pandemic Legion. Rook taking some pretty significant damage. The Dominics running a smart bomb, really that's not going to make any difference. We did lose another Thrasher for CO2, and now their Dominic's taking pretty heavy amounts of damage.
Great fight, but oh my god, that Rook has actually hit armor, he's hit structure, he may go down, perhaps they got a jam off, and then they lost a Rook. This is the first time this setup has actually lost a single ship, as far as I can remember.
A couple of the stealth bombers for Pandemic Legion starting to take a little more damage than they've seen for most of the tournament. The match, congratulations Pandemic Legion on a really amazing tournament. We all thank you for the entertainment. PL putting a lot of their heavy stuff down near the center of the beacon, the rest of their support a little further out. And already Hydra Tyrannus down. First blood to PL really quick out of the gate.
That was incredibly fast. We're seeing a ton of damage drones, mostly Valkyrie 2s coming from Pandemic Legion, with some Warrior 2s coming out of Hydra Reloaded.
One Myrmidon taking damage quickly, second one going into armor right after. At the same time, another Hydra Tyrannus down.
And we're seeing more smart bombs as employed by Panda Team early in the tournament by one of the Sleipnirs. I believe that might be Ravy, one of the closer Sleipnirs here. Fantastic initial showing by Pandemic Legion, proving why they have always achieved this position in the tournament.
Only one ship left on the field for Hydra capable of doing any damage. PL has this in the bag.
PL definitely has this in the bag. I think we're going to go with a three-peat here. Fantastic showing, Pandemic Legion. An incredible performance by you guys.
This is going to be over in just a couple seconds, and PL is going to take their third back-to-back Alliance tournament victory.
Back to back.
Kind of looks to me like Garmin, the captain, isn't actually on the field, so maybe they let some of their, alternates play.
It is very possible, yes. I don't see any alts that I know of his on them. I know that in this case we're having two friends facing each other, but I'm sure they're both going to want to get bragging rights. And my money is on the Sleipnir team. It's a very well-designed Sleipnir team, if I do say so myself.
Structure, we lost a Saber already for Hydra. A second Saber for Hydra is getting hurt pretty bad. He goes down as well. Damage spread across a little bit of the support on the Outbreak side. One of their Sleipnirs almost at half shields. But for the most part, Outbreak in a commanding lead.
Yeah, so it looks like we were actually given a real fight. This is two viable teams, although the Outbreak team is obviously the stronger in this matchup. And they also decided not to bring us a match that is going to be slow and drawn out by any means. These are two high damage teams right on top of each other. This is Alliance Tournament combat at some of its best.
Yeah. I wonder if Lady can actually turn this around
and take the win. That would be a very impressive victory.
It would.
It would pretty much require Outbreak allowing it to happen, though, so we'll see what ends up happening.
No, maybe it's just that Lady's good enough to turn this around.
And now it can be said, with Hydra winning, Garmin is once again a very rich man. The ladies of EVE start lining up. And back to you, Soundwave. So the Hun Vargers are charging right towards the Verge of Collapse team. They're going to be trying to get in close. They're probably being range tracking disrupted by the Sentinels, so they need to get in a little bit closer to start dealing damage. But once they get in range, as we just see, we now have a Newt from the Vargers on the Cyclone. We're going to be seeing a lot of damage very fast on that Cyclone of Heart. Oh, it's Dajjal. I'd trade a Cyclone for a Vargar any days, and the Cyclone actually probably can stay up a lot longer.
Oh my gosh, Vargar going down.
Is this going to be the first time we've seen a Vargar for Unreloaded die? I think it is.
so.
And there it
down.
goes. They've lost a Vargar. The Vargars are mortal after all. Unreloaded losing one of the key ships in the setup. That Scimitar's going to be
that
disappearing any
Vargar
moment now.
low structure. He's going to go down,
They're
right?
both going to go down. And
there goes the Vargar.
2/3 of the Vargars down for Unreloaded. It looks like Verge of Collapse found the counter to the Vargars. And
Same thing's happening now to Yago Yun that happened to the last Vargar. He has no reps on him right now from the Scimitar. That is probably 100% because of the Sentinel.
Yeah.
He's been neuted and nosed by that Sentinel for the majority of this match, and his cap has to be hurting. He's not getting a cycle. Vargar down.
Oh, all of the Vargars are down for Unreloaded. Verge of Collapse is going to be our 10th Alliance Tournament champion.
Hydra Reloaded, Pandemic Legion, the winner of this for all the marbles for the 11th Alliance Tournament Championship.
Both teams are going for the Scimitar trade. The Pandemic Legion Scimitar is now whipped, Tingling is whipped, while Count Monte Carlo is whipped, scrambled, and neuted and painted.
Scimitar down for
chunks of Tingling are shedding. He is in deep hole, and he is down.
Both teams have lost their Scimitars now. There is no logistics on the field.
Hydra Reloaded technically could lose here on points if they do not kill these Harpies fast enough. It all now comes down to how good of a pilot Dunkel 101 is early on in the day and early in the match. He is wept by this Claymore. The Claymore has gotten on top of it.
But
he
will
is
it be able to kill him? 1 minute 52 seconds.
1 minute 52
I don't think
seconds.
he can
Will
do
he
it.
have enough damage to kill him?
Pandemic Legion, 3 matches to 2, has been victorious after already losing yesterday in their own series to Hydra Reloaded, coming back through the losers bracket.
What a comeback.
That is unbelievable.
It is match point for Camel Empire. They have to win 1 more game. Nully have to win 3, and Nully have brought out the big guns.
What's going to go first? The Proteus is still boosting, though.
That Aneros is down into the bottom of his armor tank. It's Logi versus Logi. That Proteus is losing chunks
the Proteus
of his armor.
is losing armor.
The Aneros is nearly in structure.
But you see he's taking more and more damage, and he's gone. He is off the field. The logistics is down, and this Tinker is now extraordinarily vulnerable to a very high DPS team. Flagship down.
Whoa. That's going to be a shiny kill mail for us to look at later. The entire tournament rests on the structure of a Paladin here.
Very shortly, this will be it. Camel Empire have won Alliance Tournament 12.
And Camel Empire win Alliance Tournament 12.
These two teams sum up the meta that we have seen this whole tournament so well. The TFIs, the SNIs, the Bombers, the T3Ds, the Claymores use tackle. It is beautiful. Slowly pulling back to the edge of the arena. Warlords slowly, gently pushing in, circling them. Each team vying for position.
Completely engaged each other.
Simple Casper getting low, going down into armor. Is he going to hit structure?
He goes super deep. Those reps are way too late.
Our Warlord's going to get another pickup.
The Malice is on top of the Scimitar. This is not good. This is not good. Huge fight right now.
Down.
Oh boy, Claymore's super low as well. Does the Scimitar have nukes? He does
Claymore
not. Scimitar
down.
does not have the cap to rep him.
It's the first time Warlords of the Deep certainly have won an Alliance tournament.
What an incredible end to an incredible tournament. Great flying from both teams. Very, very exciting to watch. I don't think they'll live long, though, because they're far outside Logi rep range, and with all this light missile damage that
Hyena's down already for Pandemic Legion. That's the target painting in the webs off the field.
Wow, Dan Cool and Blue Melon just tearing a hole right through Tuskers. They're getting very, very close to Skylar's Scimitar. There's a grappler and nude on him. He's in trouble.
King is now down. Scimitar for Pandemic Legion is now down. The Caracals and the Orthers will no longer have any support. The Vigils are being jammed out by the Kitsunades, which have somehow survived this entire time.
Pulling Skylar is still living. Skylar's still alive.
Caracal is down.
They only have two targets, a Drake and an Orthrus.
Damage on to the Orthrus now. They're going to primary him to get the rapid light damage.
So much missile guidance disruption and the double Jackdaw, double Orthrus, they are going to be able to kite out these Bargus, which are only using RHMLs with the missile disruption. It's going to be difficult for them to get in range. I am just blown away. Tusker's coming back strong after that wild fourth match, showing that their execution in this match was spot on. Blue Melon and Dan Cool did an absolutely amazing job trying to bring it back with both of the Bargus. They've been absolutely stable, stalwart pilots the entire tournament, but I just don't think it was enough.
He's now got his ASP reloaded.
Oh,
but it's not too late.
The Jackdaws go
down. The Drake is only late. Tusker's company has won the Alliance tournament.
Tusker's coming up first place.
Has been crowned.
final match of Alliance Tournament 15 with Vidra versus Hydra. I'm Rain, and I'm joined by Moderator.
Also, Nick Domar taking a massive amount of damage, armor going rather quickly. Is this another hull tank?
Yes.
It is another hull tank. So another hull tank out of Vidra working to their great effect. Vidra have a total of 5 major damage ships. Right now, Hydra only has 4. Those Punishers have to do perfect work, and those Brutixes have to get in and apply maximum damage if Hydra want to get the tempo lead. Right now, Hughlite Bender is doing his very best, the untackled Gila, to run as far away as he can. Cuckoo will die. There's no way around that. However, the question is for Vidra, can they just out-trade?
So now there's only one Gila left, one Navy Drake for Vidra, and it looks like Hydra may be able to win this DPS race.
Casper's spooling up his micro jump drive.
He's at 10%.
Going to try
He's
to pull
10%
range.
structure. He's at 10% structure.
If he pulls this off, Hydra has a very real chance of taking the victory that way. And he secures it! He pulls range immaculately.
No, he died! He died!
No! He landed at 123 kilometers in his inertia took him outside of the arena. Nebula, however, is only armor tanked. His hull is bleeding rapidly. And what that would mean is that Vidra, even though there's a minute left, I think it's fairly safe to call this, Vidra Reloaded have absolutely done what no one has ever really succeeded before. Last year they came top 6. This year they will win the Alliance Tournament, slaying all the heads of the Hydra.
The memories. I was the only pilot in the Pandemic Legion team that year to die. We won anyways, in spite of me. And Hydra Vidra last year. We saw Drakes. We saw PL losing to Tuskers. We took a Drake, but it was just 1 year too soon. So many great moments in the Alliance tournaments. It really throws me back. And you can see how far we've come from some super weird, clowny UI things to what we have now. So it has been absolutely great. For this segment, we've got another little poll for you guys. What is your favorite team of the Alliance tournament this year? I am, partial to the Pandemic Legion team, but I was also a huge fan of both the Tri team and the NC team as well, because they're kind of my boys. I gotta root for them, even though they've been better than us. It seems like every single year. And also, Damascus, your team was also pretty great.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they were the darlings last year. This year, there is just so much expectations on you, and you guys still lived up to the challenge. What's in store for next year for your guys?
I don't know. I'm actually taking a breather. Temples has moved out, possibly moving to Null. There's a lot of changes in the factional warfare scene and everything, and so it's gonna be interesting to see where the ships, everything lands on TQ there. But I'm definitely I'm hooked on tournaments. I started just a few years ago, and now I'm just entering into whatever I can.
Yeah, it's actually pretty nifty. Some of the Alliance tournament pilots, we threw a graph at the beginning of the match or beginning of the day talking about, some of the most active pilots. We saw a bunch of Hydra and Vidra pilots. But the Tri team it seemed to be pretty new, with the exception of 1 or 2 members, which was pretty nifty. So it's a young man's game, I should say, the Alliance tournament now, and that's really wholesome to see. It's not a bunch of these old hearts or old hats going over and over, keep winning it ad nauseum. So that is pretty neat. And so we're going to have an interview in a couple minutes with the captain of the Tri team. So actually, we can go into that right now. And Vari, you're pretty new with the Alliance tournament, right? This is your first year as a captain?
It's my first year as a captain and my second year in the AT, yeah.
That just seems unfair. We've actually got a pretty neat graph that shows the top 3 teams and kind of where their pilots came from. Do you want to just for your team, the guys in red, want to break down a little bit of how that worked out and sort of what each member brought to the team?
Yeah, of course. So we can, once I see the graph pop up. Thank you. So we can see, if we start from the top, we see that one person hopping on down from Mysteria Concord down to Triumvirate, and that would be me with my second year in the AT. And we see a lot of our dudes have only really been in the AT 1 or 2 years at the most, we have a few people. We have our main co-captain, Calders Rex, or El Diablo de Rozo, who came from Exodus and has been Exodus co-captain and has been an incredible help and honestly a theory crafting god for the Tri team this year. His ability to predict and figure out what other people would bring honestly won us so many matches that we probably shouldn't have won. And it was insane what he could do. And what I find really interesting, if you look back on the Triumvirate line, you don't see a dot for last year, and that's because Triumvirate didn't field a team in AT15. Due to some interesting shenanigans with a certain captain named Cuff Cuff King Voodoo, Triumvirate didn't really want to field a team last year, and so they didn't. Instead, they focused on the war they were in and let the AT be. And this year, they actually planned to do the same thing until I decided to step up and try to form an AT team and see how far we could go. And I like to think that went really, really well.
Yeah, you guys were definitely the darlings of the tournament, and you got to top 3, which is incredible, especially for a first-time captain. So I know, like, you guys made the decision to compete, which is great. To not, pay attention to, or at least get bogged down by what's going on TQ. Something that I personally have fond memories of doing. We've kind of abandoned allies in the past, saying, "Hey, Alliance tournament, we gotta try and win this one." So what does it take to be a captain, especially on a captain of a team that has not really competed in a year or two, and really hasn't made it all that far in the Alliance tournament as a whole?
In my opinion, a good captain is someone who's able to admit his mistakes, work well with the team, and have the confidence to kind of keep going through the adversity. Because, I mean, at the start of our practices, a lot of us were brand new. Some people have flown in one AT 2 years ago, some people flew last year, but a lot of our team core were kind of new to the AT scene. And honestly, our first month, we were, to put it bluntly, atrocious. Like, we did very, very poorly in our practice matches. Our theory crafting was really sketchy. And overall, we were, I want to say a D tier team. Until I want to say about a month or maybe a month and a half in, something kind of clicked. We got the core group of people who really stood with us and kind of went to the important practices. We had the people who really put all the effort into it, and we kind of figured out what we thought the meta was going to be, which was like the idea of triple battleship cores, and we really put forward and we practiced that really, really hard and spent all of our time really practicing the same comps over and over again. Like, as I mentioned in my AAR, when I said we practiced some mirror matchups like hundreds of times, I was not exaggerating anything. We spent overall, I want to say, over 700 hours just practicing, just 700 hours, man hours practicing. And being able to put all that time into an AT team is what truly helps us get this far.
Yeah, so I mean that's incredible. The amount of dedication that goes into this. A lot of times it's hard to kind of translate that to a lot of people who just watch it, unless you've like really gone through it and endured all of those tests, which can be very frustrating and can lead you to hating one another. You kind of don't really appreciate it. So it's cool that you guys started off just this year and had that much dedication to it. So we looked at the red line of that graph, and we can just throw it back up really quickly because I'm going to have Alexi kind of break down the rest of it as the other members. Thanks. The other members up there. So Alexi, why don't you break down the rest of this graph for us?
That's definitely a bit of an ambush on me. Well, you see actually the core of Tri is, well, I say the core. The most dominant part of the Tri graph is there are a lot of players who did play in AT14 who sort of came back for AT15. There's a good couple of players there. But you are just sort of absolutely dominated by comparison by the strong cores that Hydra and Vidra have. Hydra and Vidra, sorry, who have been playing sort of the Alliance tournament so much further. I have a different version of this graph, which isn't a graph, it's just an absolute wall of text. But it's such a weird thing to look at because for Hydra and Vidra, you just have, this is where the pilot flew this year. This is where they flew the year before, and there's entries all the way down. Compared to that, compared to your Tri team, which is just sort of triumvirate, and then you have 3 players who played in 15. You have El Diablo de Rojo in Exodus, of course. You played for Asteria Concord, and Irenia played for It's Only Pixels, and nobody else on Tri even sort of did anything with the tournament, at least not on those accounts, of course. Meanwhile, you're looking at the Hydra and Vidra teams that won last year, basically, and who've been winning going back to teams like Warlords, Camel, Gorgon Empire, Afterlife, and sort of Darkside, who were an underrated team at the time, because I think we mentioned on earlier with Pandy and Ice Tim.
Yeah, I remember the Darkside team. They always seemed to be a team that would take like 1 or 2 games each year off of a team that you wouldn't expect them to take. You're like, oh, they have no business winning this, and then they do. So they've upset Hydra before, they've upset PL before, and it's super cool to see them just kind of do their magic and always do those upsets. Just consistently do the upsets, I should say. But yeah, this is pretty nifty just to see just how sprawling these teams are, and then just how sparse the Tri team is, and just how far they've gotten. And Anvari, you guys came through the elimination bracket really, really far. Do you think that gave you like an advantage? Did that just make you guys tired? What was it like being in the elimination bracket?
Well, our first 2, well, I'll just go over our entire route because, we had 2 matches in the winners bracket before Hydra crushed that dream pretty quickly. We hit Test, and I want to say Of Sound Mind Snuffed Out in our first 2 matches, and we won against them. And we felt really confident going into, Hydra, but we knew who they were. And so we brought an interesting comp to see how it would go, and we outthought ourselves, honest to God, and we lost that 0-100, and that kind of put us in the losers bracket into a really interesting spot. It gave us a really, really clear shot. We hit some really good teams, but an incredibly clear shot to hit the top 4. And I feel like we achieved exactly what we thought we could have once we saw that bracket and we knew what we could do. We knew we practiced with a lot of those teams on there before, and we kind of knew what they could do, and we've seen a lot of their matches, so we knew what they could fly, and that kind of factored into what we brought, factored into how we flew, and overall, I feel being in the losers bracket actually helped us a lot more than it hurt us. Like, being in all those matches is actually really fun as well, because who doesn't love flying in the AT?
Yeah, plus you get the skins. Think of all the extra skins you get for being in the elimination bracket for so long. It's a tactical advantage. I know some years the teams that actually won it all came from the elimination bracket, and they credited just being, just on the next level in terms of communication within the team, and just kind of being in a rhythm, which is pretty neat. So you were saying that you kind of outthought yourselves for the match against Hydra. After that, how did you guys decide what to bring to each match? Like, was it just a matter of adapting to the picks and bans, or did you do a lot of like really heavy predicting before the match of what people would bring, or did you just bring a setup that you were comfortable with flying that was strong against most setups?
It was a nice mixture of all 3. What we did, we had our main core setup, as many people saw and kind of made fun of. I had some good friends of mine who said, wow, can Tri only fly one thing? And kind of, yeah. But in my opinion, we were really good at flying that one thing. And what we did was we took every single team that we could have hit, and we went over every single match they flew. We looked at every single pick or ban they had, and we asked ourselves, okay, so they banned this, their opponents banned this, why did they pick this? And by kind of putting ourselves in their shoes, we were able to kind of figure out what we thought they were going to bring, and so we counterpicked it every time. With our same, core comp, i.e., we'd put in ECM, we put in newts, we put in hacks, all depending on what they would bring. And the first match we hit in the losers bracket, if I recall correctly, was Centipede Caliphate, some really, really good friends of mine. And interestingly enough, they started their first ban by trying to ban out, force us into our flagless shack and counter it. However, it ended up into being a really close to a mirror matchup, something that we had practiced so many times that it was nearly second nature to us just to fly that match again and again, just like we did in practice. And since then, from that match on, it was really just figuring out what they would bring and how we could counter it. In the Tempest Kels match, for example, Template Scouts who were fantastic practice partners, and I am forever in their debt for being just fantastic fucking people. I feel terrible for what we did because we banned them into a very, very, very gold heavy comp, and then brought 8 gold jams and perma-jammed them the entire time. And I still just feel terrible about that, but you know, all is fair in love in the AT, right?
I mean, you do have to kind of you do get credit for gambling on them taking just all Ammar ships and then just skewing all of your jammers 100% in one direction. During the Alliance Tournament matches, we can't actually see if jam hits or not, but it seemed in that match, all the jams seemed to be hitting all the time when they needed to be, just by virtue of having the jammers skewed, which is like a neat little captain's trick that we don't get to see all that much just by viewing. So it's kind of neat to see the back end of that. Damascus, you were on that team. What was it like? what was going through your head as you guys were making that match?
What was going through my head mostly was that ECM is a fair and balanced mechanic. That's what I was thinking. No, I actually have footage captured from my perspective that I'm going to publish to YouTube soon. I actually forgot that I have all of our matches from Templa, so you guys will be able to see and hear the comms and the frustration. I was actually going to comment that I read the AAR from Try there, and what stood out to me was that basically what Enveri is saying, that they brought the same core but switched it up, and I think that's a really interesting sort of insight into how they did so well, which is to go with something that's solid and then make those adjustments to counter. So you're not like flipping on your head and trying to do some crazy hard counter comp. You're just giving that tweak to give you that edge. And of course, we felt it in our match where we got knocked out because they, like you just described, bringing the jams to counter us, and just those little things. And then also, like, we quite a bit earlier in the stream, we talked about the interchangeability due to the points changes. So just the way that things were set up, I think Try really capitalized on the opportunities to make those clever counters to their opponents.
So during the rule changes kind of changed quite a bit in terms of the meta, and you guys adapted to that really well, and you kind of read it and you skewed your jams and just played it kind of perfectly to get to the end there. I remember every time we do like predictions on set, it would be like, Try is still there? Well, that's kind of interesting. And then after a while, I was like, well, Try is just gonna obviously win. They're still here. They've just been winning. So it was kind of neat to see that swing going from who are they to, oh, of course they're gonna win. But getting to the finals or getting kind of towards the end was like a new grueling task. So how did you guys, really prepare for that? Like what was the mental prep going in that last week, going into the final week there?
You asked how to prepare for it, and if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, we didn't prepare for it. We didn't, like, as one of the commentators said, we didn't expect to get to the final weekend. Not that I'm complaining, of course, but it was just shocking to us that we got that far, and a lot of us were just kind of, still in that state of shock the day of prepping for it. And so, during the week we didn't actually have that was the 1 week we did not have a practice. I gave everybody the week off and told them, I don't care what happens this weekend, no matter what we do, I am proud of you all, and holy shit, we got at least 3rd place.
Yeah, playing with house money on that one.
But on Thursday night, or Friday night, I don't remember what it was, my co-captain and I sat down and we talked about what we would do. Because this first best of 3 would be our first really experience with hitting the 10 ships ban rule. Because we didn't really experience it in the NC dot match, even though we had a chance to. So we prepped all sorts of weird comps. We prepped, Armor Stork, Armor Bifrost. We prepped, what if we do with a Vedmax ban? What do we do if our Leshak dies and we can't bring it again? What do we do if we can bring a Leshak? What do we do if we can't bring this ship and that ship? And we prepped all sorts of different comps, and we felt we had it in the bag. They were all different variations, but they all kind of flew very, very similarly. And in our first match, our mistake was leaving ECM up. We thought they were going to bring ECM, so we prepped for it. but apparently we didn't prepare enough. A majority of our team was permajammed the entire time, and about 2 minutes into the match, I kind of told myself, yeah, this is probably a loss. But then match 2, thankfully, ECM was down, or at least the good ECM ships were down, but we still banned the Chameleon because I hate that ship with a fiery passion. Gila drones plus ECM, can you ask for anything worse? But NC brought an interesting comp. They brought once again an ECM heavy comp, but it wasn't as strong as the last one. So we were able to kind of steamroll through it, nuke out their ECM, and end up killing their 70 bill flagship, which is kind of the highlight of the AT for me, which is really, really nice. But the worst part about the best of 3 schedule, someone was actually complaining in chat about it, was we had 8 minutes from when we were teleported back from our second match to when we were teleported back for our third and final match. 8 minutes to do bans, to prepare a comp, to talk about how we're going to fly it and get ready to go. And I think I lost a few years off of my life, if I'm completely honest. That was terrible. Honestly, terrible.
One of my favorite moments from Alliance Tournament 11 is because we had to go through, the PL team had to go through the elimination bracket. We just had time and time again where we just had to keep fighting with the very little time in between. And one of our pilots, Admiral Gabirius, otherwise known as Gobbins, who's the leader forward now, went to the GMs and said, hey, if you don't give us a couple more minutes, we're going to go on strike or something. And the GM's response was, okay, you're forfeiting this match? Is that what I'm getting? And his tone completely changed. GM Spider, do you have like any really fun moments from dealing with these captains and dealing with these teams that you can share?
I mean, oh man, there were a couple of cases where, yeah, they were demanding a couple more minutes, and it's just the same old, hey, we cannot, delay the schedule. The schedule is what it is, and we're not going to be kind of sidestepping from that. We had a couple cases where I think it was the test captain had set either the GM Corporation or the CCP Alliance as red. So when I tried to contact him, I would have the chat open. He would be there, but he wouldn't respond. So I was just assuming that he was just going to forfeit or something. And then I started pinging him in the Alliance Tournament captain's channel, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, that's totally my fault." But yeah, I mean, it's mostly we just have a bit of a chat, and it's pretty casual most of the time, and people in most cases are kind of on the ball with these things. They've done this a lot of times before, and especially when you're getting into like the third week, and then it's same old kind of routine, and they are well prepared for it. I actually see that Rise of Filth is talking in the Twitch chat about making a better schedule, giving more time, and my answer to that is that we do give teams plenty of time to prepare. In all cases, they know exactly when the bans are starting. They have the entire day to theory craft about it. This is just to make it so that we don't have to have the guys waiting for 3 hours before the match kicks off or whatever. There has to be some kind of compromise. The only exception, of course, is the best of 3 and best of 5 matches. They are intentionally made to be short on time. You're supposed to, have very limited time constraints to work with, and that is just kind of how do I put it? Just another dynamic that people need to keep in mind when they're doing the best of 3 matches. It's just another challenge that they need to face, and they need to be ready to, conquer that in some way.
And that's a perfect way to describe it. It's a challenge, and we made mistakes this year because of that challenge. And I can assure you, next year, that's not going to happen again.
That's exactly the thing. It's this is the teams that are well organized will benefit from it. But I mean, if a team just doesn't know what they're doing, then they're going to get penalized for it, and that's it's very much an intentional thing. This is not a shall we say bad schedule in that regard. It is very intended.
Yeah, there are certain matchups where I remember our team saying, "Oh, if we could only play that again and be prepared for it, our team comp definitely is better in every way." But the cadence of matches pushing people to make quick decisions, that's kind of what makes the AT finals and the best of threes so much fun to deal with. It's much better than the previous schedule where it was literally just a best of one, and if you lost, you're out for the tournament. But talking about, Anvari was talking about how he gave his team the week off and didn't really have any like super secret plans to deal with the finals. We have a neat little graph showing the comparison of the top 3 teams from the Alliance tournament. You guys can see just how anomalous the Tri team was compared to Hydra and Vidra Lul in terms of players on the team. Alexi, why don't you just quickly just explain it for us in case people haven't seen, and just highlight how ridiculously crazy this was.
Well, this is specifically looking at experience before AT16, because if you actually include the AT16 runs, they don't look as different because, of course, Tri made their run through the losers bracket and put in a lot of matches. But all of that Tri team completely new to competing as that team for that year. You were not a team before, and you have about 70 matches worth of combined experience across the entire roster compared to Vidra bringing in about 200 matches and Hydra pushing 300 played matches in the Alliance tournament. It's a huge experience disparity.
Yeah, that is absolutely nuts for just seeing how young a team is here. Going up the likes of DHB Wildcat, going up against the likes of the Templars team, and just kind of making your presence known there. That's really impressive there, and I love this graph. It's one of my favorite ones. So going forward, Anvari, what's next for you guys? What's next for the Tri team? You guys got the taste of riches with what, 12 ships, I think? And a bunch of ship skins as well. 14, yeah, okay.
Yeah, 14 ships and 80 ship skins. And the future for Tri, I'm not sure yet. I don't know if I'll be on the AT team next year. I'm taking a long break from EVE because doing the AT for that long, doing the AT and being a captain, it really burns you out. And I'm going to, with my quick break from EVE, however long that may be, hopefully the Tri team will be left in good hands if I don't return to myself.
Well, I'm sure if you don't return next year, they will fail horribly because that's just what happens. And yeah, I definitely do get the burnout for Alliance Tournament. You talk about playing on the test server sometimes 40, 50 hours a week. It feels like a job. And you don't want to look at spaceships again until December. So, my goodness. And talk about dedication. You're doing this on your phone because your power keeps going in and out due to the weather. That's just dedication. That's why Tri placed as highly as they did. But kind of wrapping up with it, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, giving us a little bit of insight, and posting your AAR, which was really great. It's one of my favorite things of the Alliance tournament, which was started way back when by Seamus Orzaz. Just doing a breakdown of kind of how these teams went and went forward through their planning stage. So it's really fun. Just to see how much work these guys do and how much goes into it. But just looking back on Alliance Tournament 16, Suetonia, what were some of your favorite matches? Some of like the craziest comps you saw? Just maybe upsets, anything like that.
And I think my favorite match was Templus's first match in the first weekend, just with the bombing run, where you just saw that Brutix just die, I think, like 14 seconds into the match, which was really awesome to see. I also really loved the Goon Swarm match too, with the Matani in the like Ruse Augur Navy issue with just all polarized weapons, and Asher also using all polarized in his Absolution. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for many people, including some people who refer to me as a girl, but that's fine. Anyways, GM Spider, you just by virtue of being a referee and kind of being our CCP got ears on the ground and force on the server to do everything for us. you got to see basically every match. And sometimes you were forced to see every match against your will. What were some of your favorite moments? I know you've been kind of you've seen, this isn't your first rodeo. You've seen the Alliance Horn before. What was your favorite moments this year?
Man, it's gonna have to be either the Goonswarm bait in, I think it was their first match where the Mittani was flying a polarized Walkerer. Just like that, nobody expected that. I didn't expect it. It surprised everyone in the ref room. I think the other strong candidate was the single hero hyena that warped in at like 0, and the rest of the fleet was like 50 kilometers away, and it did its one job, and then it got deleted off the field. I think those two moments are kind of the ones that stand out the most, and I kind of look back at them and I'm like, yeah, okay, that was pretty good.
What about you, Damascus? What was your favorite moment?
Oh, we're all talking about this polarized Navy Augur. I gotta say that I suspected that possibility. What I did not suspect in that match was the polarized Absolution, which just made me like throw up in my mouth a little bit. Oh, it's hideous. I was super happy to see the Paladin show up a bunch of times. We actually faced off against a comp with Paladin, and there was like Zealots. Every time I saw a Zealot, and I was on TeamSpeak with the team, and while we were just like spectating, I was like, see, everyone else brings Zealots. Why can't we be cool and bring a Zealot? I kept getting shot down. I was like, no, I love that Ammar. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great tournament. I sort of, for the most part, I was keeping my head down and just focusing on our own matches. And there's some great things like our bombing run there. And I had a couple of really fun plays in that Sacrilege, like I kept talking about. But it's just overall, there's lots of great stuff this tournament.
Yeah, the Templates bombing run was immaculate. I absolutely loved it. It's kind of a site that it's very hard to get it right. It's very easy to completely screw it up. So I have a huge appreciation for it. And it just looked magnificent. Just the amount of damage just going in that wave. It was so cool to see. One of my favorite moments. I also love the Samurai Sold Out team. Just every time they played, it seemed to be like just craziness that kind of lifted them and took them to a victory that most people didn't expect. I remember they took a Loki and they won with it. Absolutely nuts. But Alexi, what was? Oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Alexi.
Like, honestly, I can't really pin down any specific moment. It's really hard when a lot of my stuff is viewed through a very strange lens because of what's going on in the stats room. But like, my favorite bits of AT16 was there's this sort of 3-4 match run for Templates that included kind of beating out my own Laserhawks, but where just every single match, the execution was you brought the exact counter, did the exact counter things, and it was a masterclass on why this comp beats that comp. And it was just beautiful to watch. And I think I was lucky enough to actually commentate one of them as well.
All right, Jim, sorry, what were you saying?
It was the just one thing that I remembered. We were in the ref room and we were going a bit wild over this part where I can't remember what match it was exactly, but there was I think it was a Brutix that was like, it caught reps when it had like 1% hull left or something, and then survived for like an insane amount of time. Like, I think it even actually survived the entire match like that. Just watching it slowly trickle down, and we were like expecting it to die, and then it catches a rep. So we were just, no, what is happening? How is this possible? It's that's another one of those moments that was actually really good.
And I know you mentioned that one of your favorite moments was killing the NC flagship. Do you have any other ones that really stood out, or is that like solid #1 moment?
Well, I had a personal counter going, and just to give you a spoiler, it was 4. It was 4 flagships we killed with our flagship, which I think is really, really funny. Just because we killed some really good teams' flagships. We killed, I think, Kausf, Skill Yourself, NC and Vidra, all of which had very nice and well-fit flagships, but our flagship ended up on top, and overall, those are probably some of the best parts of it, because I remember in our second match versus Hydra, I'm Logi, right? So I don't usually call targets, And I'm like, hey guys, go get that fucking Leshak. He's right next to you, right next to the battleship core. Grab tackle, let's kill him. And my co-captain's like, no, Enviro, shut the fuck up. Because he didn't realize it was their flagship. But once that kind of clicked in his head, we fully switched everything we had to go tackle the AB Leshak. And we burned it down really, really well within time. And that was just really great to do, and it felt really, really good. Even if we ended up losing the series overall, that was just phenomenal and felt really
nice. Yeah, it's always really cool to kill a flagship, and hopefully you guys were able to loot the Rex. Hopefully GM Spider didn't move you out immediately after. You got to get some good loot to go along with your 14 super shiny ships and however many skins you guys got as well. But yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to kind of do this Alliance Tournament retrospective, not only for Alliance Tournament 16, but for the last few Alliance Tournaments as well. Just the memories of EVE Online. It's cool to look at the history and just see how we've all sort of evolved as a player base and in terms of competitive EVE-ness. I know we were talking about it before, but the first few Alliance tournaments were super clowny. There were always like these ridiculous moments until you get to like Alliance Tournament 7 or 8. I think that's when just the teams all become really good. So there's like some really good skill at the top, and then like the middle teams are just all stacked. There's like almost no fluff at all. But yeah, it's been good. Obviously, this show will be up on YouTube, and as well as all the previous Alliance Tournament Streamfleet broadcasted shows. They will be on YouTube, or they are on YouTube as well. In terms of Alliance Tournament matches, you can catch them on Twitch itself, and also they will be up on YouTube in the future. Not going to make our production team do it in the next week or so, but they'll be there as well. As Suetonia was reminding me earlier, watching it on Twitch isn't nearly as horrible as it used to be, so it's actually a pretty good experience. So you can find these moments that these teams or these experts, analysts and commentators and talking heads brought up. So you could find them and watch them, have a good chuckle. And the Tempest bombing run, absolutely stellar. But I think, unless anyone has anything that they want to add coming up to the end of the show here, feel free to chime in if you do. If you got any shout outs you want to give to your teams or anyone else, or any events that you want to hype up in the coming weeks. I know it's been GM week.
Oh, yes.
Or at least last week was GM week.
I was actually going to mention that. You guys should probably check out Uli on Sunday or tomorrow. There's rumors that something big is going to happen there.
What? Uli,
so
obviously.
More rogue drones are going to die?
Something along those lines, yeah.
Can it be another best of 3 between us and Vidra?
No. No.
Unless you guys decide to take a botting, I don't think that's probably going to happen. Spoiler, don't do that. That's bad. It's like even worse than drugs, which aren't that bad.
I don't think you can bot in the AT easily.
I mean, exile is legal, botting is not, so.
Exactly. Just remember that, kids. Feel free to overdose on exile, but not on botting. That's good. But for Suetonia, GM Spider, Damascus Kadesh, Alexi, and of course, Anvari, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Elise Randolph. This has been the Alliance Tournament talk show, the last one until the next Alliance Tournament, which hopefully comes sooner rather than later. Please, Bob, make it happen. For you guys out there watching, don't get lost in Abyssal sites. We've been trying to make a 5 to 15-minute beep every time you're watching. Just a reminder so you don't get stuck in there. But thanks, everybody. Take care, and we will see you next time.